We're here at the Pyle Center with Duane Roen. It's August 26, 2021, and I'm Mckell Keeney. Today we're going to talk about some of the history of Tempe and the people who live in Tempe and work in Tempe, and Duane has agreed to tell us his story. So first of all, where and in what town were you born?
I grew up on a dairy farm outside of Hammond, Wisconsin, about 30 miles east of St. Paul, Minnesota. And so I'm light years away from there now.
And before you got to Tempe, where else did you go in the world?
So I went to college, University of Wisconsin-River Falls. I taught high school in Richmond, Wisconsin. I then finished a master's degree while I was doing that. Then I did a PhD at the University of Minnesota, and I taught there while I was a doctoral student. And then I taught at the University of Nebraska for a year. And then I went to the University of Arizona for 11 years in the English department. And then I went to Syracuse University for 2 years. But I have to tell you that after living in Tucson, Syracuse is tough duty. We had 182 inches of snow the first winter in Syracuse. So we had an opportunity to come back to Arizona, and I could have gone back to the University of Arizona, but Arizona State University heard that I was interested in coming back to the state, so they called me up and said, would you be interested in coming here? And so I applied for the Director of Writing Programs job, and in 1995 I started at ASU, and I've been at ASU ever since, and I've been a resident of Tempe since 1995, which is relatively a short period of time, only 26 years now. So.
Well, that's amazing. You have, I'm sure, some of the Midwest boy in you still, and
I
also
do.
you're now also a Westerner, or do you identify as a Westerner?
I identify as a Westerner, but I do. You know, I feel so fortunate to have grown up on a dairy farm for all sorts of reasons. One was, by the time I was 6 years old, I was a pretty good employee. And we had chores every day, and we worked long hours some days by the time we were 6 years old. But I never thought anything of it. I never complained about it. I thought that, you know, that's the way it is on the farm growing up. And I learned so many skills on the farm. You know, you learn to take care of animals, you learn to take care of crops, you learn to be a carpenter, a woodworker, a mechanic, a welder, a plumber, electrician. And you learn, the most important thing I think is to work with others, because on a farm, when the sun is shining, you all work together. You know, and it's really crucial that you work well together. So I wish everybody had an opportunity to grow up on a farm.
My dad grew up on a farm, and I think he would identify with that. He felt like he could build a house if he needed to, right? You just start from scratch and build your own house if you have to, right?
I've done that. I've built houses from scratch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Do you know very much about where your ancestors came from? What about your parents, your grandparents, and those who came before you? Where did they come from?
I sure do. On my dad's side, all of the ancestors are from Norway, and mostly, well, entirely from just outside of, in farmland just outside of Oslo, about 70 miles outside of Oslo, Norway. And then on my mom's side, it's a mix of English, Dutch, Swedish, and Norwegian. And my Dutch ancestors were in North America by the 1640s in what's now Brooklyn, New York. Barkelo is the name. Barkelo is spelled over 300 ways in the United States. And in Brooklyn, near the Bay Ridge area, there's a Barkelo cemetery still. And there are graves going back to the Revolutionary War in there.
So probably most of those people in the cemetery are your forebears then?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. Have you been able to visit that cemetery?
I have visited that cemetery. It's really cool. And some of the old farmland that's in that area is now a park. And so I got to walk on the old farmland, which is now a park. And of course, they all left Brooklyn by about the 1820s because, you know, it was pretty urban by that point.
I've heard there's just something about visiting those spots where you have those family connections going back so many centuries, actually, right?
Yeah, it's cool.
That line.
And I love visiting cemeteries where ancestors are buried. So whenever we go back home to visit family, we always visit cemeteries.
That's great. I wouldn't be surprised if some of what you have become today is because of the things that you've had passed down to you from all those ancestors.
Well, yeah, I mean, all my Norwegian ancestors, well, and my Dutch ancestors and Swedish ancestors, they were all farmers for centuries. They were farmers.
You come from many lines of farmers then.
Yeah.
Not just on one line. Okay. Well, let's see. When you were growing up then, you were in the Midwest, and tell me about your house. What was it like? It was a farmhouse?
It was a farmhouse. It was a farmhouse built in the about 1870s, I think. Then when we were a kid, it was very drafty and very cold. And when we were kids, they remodeled the house. And when they remodeled it, there was no basement under it. When they remodeled it, they jacked it up, dug under it, put in a basement. And we lived in the house while all of that was happening. And the first thing they built was the basement. And then we lived in the basement while they were doing the rest of the house. And I remember eating cereal in the morning, and sawdust would drip down from up above, and it'd fall in our cereal. I'll never forget
extra fiber,
that.
right?
Yeah, extra fiber, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, you worked hard on the farm, you said, but were there things that you did for fun as a family?
We did. I mean, and I had a lot of fun doing a lot of the farm work too. Like teaching calves how to drink milk out of a pail was, that was pure joy. But as a family, we spent a lot of time with family. Every week, every Sunday, we would go visit one of my grandmothers, and usually it was my mom's mom.
Was there food involved?
Oh yeah, there's always food, and on my paternal grandmother, oh man, the food was so good. The cookies and the donuts and the open-faced sandwiches. The open-faced sandwiches, that's a Scandinavian tradition. Okay. And a lot of that. And
did you do sit-down dinners on Sunday?
A lot of dinners, a lot of meals together. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
What about special holidays? Were they mostly American holidays, or did you celebrate any of the old world?
So a big holiday every year when I was growing up was Settende Mai. Settende Mai is the 17th of May, which is Norwegian Independence Day. And in western Wisconsin, which is a lot of Norwegians were there, it was a major holiday. We would celebrate it. It was like celebrating St. Patrick's Day in most places. So that was a lot of fun. And when we celebrated American holidays, a lot of the foods we ate were Norwegian foods, like rummegrøt and krumkake and fatiman, and those kinds of things. And we just absolutely love them.
Is there somewhere here in Arizona that you can get any of those things, or do you have to make them yourself?
We make some. Lefse is one of our favorites. Lefse is, for those of you who don't know who are watching this, it's a flatbread that looks like a flour tortilla, but it's made out of potatoes. And it is so good. You warm it up a little bit, and you put butter on it. And some people ruin it by putting sugar on it. So I know no one watching this video is going to ruin theirs by putting sugar on it. But there are some places here in the valley, some of the nicer food stores where you can buy lefse around the holiday season. It's
like a taste of home for you then.
Yeah.
Were there games that you played with other children or family games?
The games we enjoyed playing, I think back about some of the games that we played as kids that you don't see anymore, like pin the tail on the donkey, drop the clothespin, where you would hold as I recall, you hold the clothespin near your chin, and then you would lean over a little milk bottle and try and drop it in there. We played a lot of outdoor winter games like Fox and Geese and Red Rover. Played a lot of softball growing up. And we, in our elementary school, the elementary school I went to was a one-room country school, the same one my dad went to, and the same one my grandpa Roen went to.
That's tradition right there.
That's tradition. And by the time I was in 7th grade, the last year we were in that school before they closed all the country schools, one-room schools in Wisconsin, and we had to go to town then the next year. There were roughly 25 kids in the school, and more than half of them had the surname Roen. So all the Roen family farms were near
your
the school.
distant cousins, possibly?
Well, actually, yes. So I mean, there were a lot of first cousins,
First
but
cousins.
then later I discovered, once I got doing family history, that there was a distant cousin, a third cousin, that went to the school as well, but had a different name, and I didn't know.
just
My
didn't
mom,
even know
as it
that you
turned
were
out, my
related.
mom knew, but she never told us.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and we wore a lot of hand-me-down clothes from the kids in that family. So we got, they were family members handing their clothes to us. It was cool.
Yeah. Was there somebody in your family who was more involved than the others in the community, whether it was with politics or the faith-based organization or just
So
philanthropy or anything?
my dad was a farmer, and his life was farming, and that's it. That was it. I mean, he had pretty much nothing else.
Pretty much filled it, probably.
Filled his life, and then until 8th grade, we had a fire that destroyed the barn. I almost died in the fire.
Well, we're glad you didn't.
I'm glad I didn't too. But if it hadn't been for that fire, I would be farming now, which would be fine, but I wouldn't be here.
Really?
I wouldn't be talking to you
now.
now.
Tell me why that changed the fork in which way you went in your life.
So a couple things happened. So the fire burned down the barn. My dad got out of farming at that point. He thought about building another facility, barn, but he didn't, and he went to work for a local Ford dealership, and then he sold the farm and bought the Ford dealership a few years later. And I did do some work there, and my dad wanted me to be part of that. But in 8th grade, at the same time, I had this language arts teacher named Joyce King. And Joyce King was the most remarkable teacher and the most remarkable human being I knew. And I wanted to be like Joyce King. My aptitude had been in science and math, but I wanted to be like Joyce King because she treated people so well.
So you saw the vision then. The pesky fly is on your forehead.
Okay.
You saw the vision then of what a dedicated teacher could do to change the course of lives.
I did, yes. She was an incredible role model. And then when I had some other wonderful English teachers, and I had wonderful teachers in some other disciplines too. And then in college, one teacher in particular, Nick Carolides, was so influential. I asked him to direct my master's thesis when I did that, but we named our first child after him. Our son is named Nicholas James Roen, after Nicholas James Carolides. So
nice.
Yeah, and then when I did my doctoral degree, I had some really strong role models there too. So I really am grateful for all the wonderful role models I had while I was in school, also in life. A lot of family members were good role models in how to work hard and how to treat other people. And then, and I have to say, at ASU, I've worked with a lot of incredible role models there who really take pride in how they treat people.
Were you the first generation then in your family to graduate from college?
Yeah, I was first generation. So when I was growing up on the farm, there was a college that I got my degree from, University of Wisconsin River Falls, which was 8 miles from our farm. I did not know that college existed until I was in high school. Because we almost never went to town. We went to town, maybe
you had
once.
Everything you need because you grew your own food, right?
Yeah, we go to town maybe once a month. And when we went to town, we went to the stores we needed to go to, and then we went back home again. So, but luckily some of the teachers in high school encouraged me to go to college. And so I was first generation in all sorts of ways.
Did you live at home while you went to school?
For a while I lived at home, and then I lived in the residence hall for a year, and then I lived in an apartment for a couple of years.
So on the farm, I imagine that you had big gardens also besides other farm.
Yeah, we did
business?
Gardening, and I would, for a while I was responsible for the garden. So the garden was probably a quarter acre.
Is that something you continue to this day?
We do a little
grow some
gardening
vegetables,
now,
just a little?
but ASU has been so much of my life that we haven't taken time to do much else.
Had time to do it. But
I'm
you know how to grow vegetables though, even in this climate probably.
Yeah, we keep
ways.
a little bit. We do that. When I retire, I plan to do more.
Okay. All right. Thinking back to stories you heard from this extended family around you, or from your own immediate family. Can you think of an interesting story, family story? Okay, what is it?
So when I was a kid, we heard about my grandpa's brother, Andrew. His
Uh-huh.
Norwegian name was Hans Andeskar, but his Americanized name was Andrew Roen. And we always heard from my grandma how Andrew Roen went out west. This is west of Wisconsin. And in 1899, in February, we didn't know the dates, but I found that out later when I did family history research. The brothers went out west and picked up the body and brought it back home. And then as I started doing family history research, I was in the archives at the University of Wisconsin River Falls, and the newspaper story from February of 1899 said Andrew Roen died peacefully at his home in Pleasant Valley, Wisconsin. Well, I knew that wasn't true. I already knew that. But it took me probably 20 years of searching until I found the story from Grand Forks, North Dakota. And the newspaper story was one line. It said, Andrew Roen died on the east side of town on Sunday night. Sunday night, what, by the way, is February 19th, which is my birthday, which is the weirdest coincidence. And then a couple days later in the newspaper, it said that Andrew Roen's body was shipped back to River Falls, Wisconsin. So now the east, a key factor here is east side. Grand Forks, North Dakota in 1899 was dry. East Grand Forks, Minnesota, across the river, was a small town of about 2,000 people that had 20 saloons.
Okay.
So I will give you 20 guesses where Andrew Roen died, okay? And then I subsequently wrote to both the state of Minnesota and the state of North Dakota to get a death certificate. So he died in February of 1899. Both states started keeping death records 9.5 months later, January 1, 1900.
What are the odds?
Yeah.
But that was good detective work on your part to think through, which state is dry, which is not, what are the odds he would be in one or the other.
I mean, I think there's a good reason why that one line in the story said on the east side of town, because all the locals would know exactly what that meant.
Those are where the bars and saloons were.
Yeah. So that was a great mystery.
It's pretty amazing what we can find in old newspapers. Even when it's not always accurate, it's always a clue to kind of to this thinking maybe a new direction for what we're trying to find out and research.
Yeah, and I have one more story. I won't reveal too many details here, but actually you inspired me to do the next thing.
Did I? Okay.
So I heard you talk about DNA genealogy, and I had not done my DNA test at that point.
Okay.
So that inspired me to go do my DNA test.
Great.
And then I registered that, and every once in a while I get email, right, saying, hey, you've got a DNA, I got one today, for example. You got a DNA match here. And of course, most of the DNA matches I get, I already know who those people are because, I've done the research. But a couple years ago, and here I'm going to be kind of vague because I don't want to reveal too much information, but I got an email from someone who said, I had my DNA test done, and it says that you and I are second or third cousins. And I was born in this particular year in this location. How are we, and she said I was adopted, so how are we related? So she told me where she was born, and she told me the year she was born, and I said, I know who your mother is. So, and that was
you could figure it out and help her with that?
Yeah, very easily. It was very powerful.
It is powerful.
So thank you for that.
You are welcome. I'm happy for both of you because you know what it's like to be able to have that information that you can share because you've done the family history and can help her because her family she grew up with is still her family. This is my belief, but also she's got these ancestors that you know about from whichever line it is, whether it's Norway or whether it's the English, Dutch, Swedish line, that you can tell her about, and
Yeah.
they're just as much her ancestors as they are yours. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, let's see. We are in the education field part here, and there's a lot to talk about because of your ASU career. So you've already told me some of your favorite teachers as you were growing up. What about extracurricular activities? Did you do any of that in high school or in college?
In high school, I did one-act plays, I did forensics, I did football, baseball, basketball, wrestling. Yeah.
All right, very well rounded. When you were saying something about playing baseball growing up, I was picturing just out on the field, right? There wasn't maybe a dedicated ball field, or
Well,
was
it went
did
by
you make your own
in high
field?
school when we played.
Uh-huh.
Actually, it was just a playground when we were kids. We played softball and baseball came
Softball
later.
and baseball. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and I have to, since you mentioned baseball, I got to tell you a story
Okay.
that I just have to share. I can share the video with you if you're interested.
Of
So
course, yes.
on Father's Day this year, my wife Maureen was in Wisconsin visiting family. I couldn't because I had things I had to attend to here. And one day she said, "Let's have a Zoom family meeting tonight." And, okay, we'll get together, we'll chat. And we just chatted about this and that. My son and daughter and our grandchildren were there, and my wife. And at the end, Maureen said, at the holiday season, you always give us gifts and you always sign them from famous people. You never sign your own name. So we're going to do the same. Well, but what they did brought tears to my eyes, because what they had done is there's this thing called Cameo, where you can go to this website called Cameo and you can get relatively well-known people to do greetings for friends and family.
Uh-huh.
And they got Ozzie Smith, the really famous shortstop. Major League Baseball was one of my heroes. It said, Duane, I played shortstop. Duane, from one shortstop to another, I want to congratulate you on your decision to step down as dean at Arizona State University, and I wish you all the best. And that was one of the thrills of my life.
That is exciting.
Yeah.
That's such a recent story to share, so thank you for that.
Yeah. So anyway, I got distracted there.
No,
But
no,
yeah, I've enjoyed sports throughout my
That's
life.
good. I like hearing about what that meant to you. Were there political events that affected your educational experiences?
Well, I mean, I was an undergraduate when the Vietnam War protests were going on, and so that was part of the experience of what college was for me at the time.
And that affected the whole nation.
Yeah, it did affect the whole nation, right? And I had a cousin's husband whose body's never been found, was
sorry to
lost in
hear that.
Vietnam,
So
just disappeared.
missing in action.
Missing in action, yeah. Yeah, and his daughter was born after he left to go to war, so she never knew her father.
Wow, she never knew.
Yeah.
Well, I so appreciate everyone who served our country.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
all the conflicts. You told us about your work on the farm as a child. You were a child laborer, so to speak, right? When did you get a job outside the house for the first time, a paid job somewhere else?
Well, after the barn burned down and we stopped farming, then I would work for 2 summers on neighborhood farms. And I did that. And the first one I worked at, I got $2 a day.
Okay.
And then the next one I got $4 a day. And then I went to work at the Ford dealership where my dad owned by that point. And I worked in the shop at the beginning, and then I did bookkeeping after that, and I did some sales as well. So.
Was that an easy or hard transition from your dad to go from farming to car dealership?
I think he enjoyed it.
He enjoyed it?
He farmed on his own from the time he was 16 until he was in his 40s, and he never had a day off that whole time.
It was kind of a little bit of a break for him then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not the hours weren't quite as long.
Yeah, and he enjoys interacting. He passed away a year ago. He enjoyed interacting with people a lot, and and when you're a business, you get to interact with a lot of people. So, yeah.
That's great.
So I don't think it was hard.
All right, let's jump forward to your years at ASU and how those changed over the years. You started out teaching, and then
Yeah.
you ended up retiring as a dean and still teaching. So
Yeah.
tell me about that.
So I never intended to do administrative work. I always just wanted to be a teacher because of Joyce King. And so when I taught high school, they asked me to be the chair of the department and the district-wide language arts coordinator. And then when I got to the University of Nebraska, I was the administrator for the English Ed program. And then I went to the University of Arizona, and I was the director of the graduate program in rhetoric and composition. And then I directed graduate studies for the whole department. And then I went to Syracuse as an administrator, and then I came here and did administrative work, and that's all I ever did at ASU was administrative work and teaching too, from 1995 until June 30th of 2021. It just sort of fell in my lap, so it's really interesting how that happened, because I never intended to do that.
Well, those are some pretty incredible things that you just rattled off there like they were nothing, but I thought it was very inspiring to read. There was an article where I read about how involved you are with the students, even as an administrator, that when they move in for the fall semester, you help carry the mini fridges up to the dorms on the second stories and third stories or whatever it is, and get to know the students.
I love helping the students move into the residence halls. I did that again this August, and I got to carry one refrigerator this time.
Okay.
That's all I did this time. But, because they're so excited, these are students who are new to college, and their families are so excited, and they're so grateful for, we show up in force to help them move into the residence halls, and they're so grateful for that. We want them to have that really positive experience, the first day on campus. So.
Well, that's a great way to be a mentor, to actually get involved in their lives, so that's great to hear. Now you live in Tempe for how long now? Tell us how long.
Since July of 1995.
July of 1995. Are you in the same house, the same neighborhood, or have you moved?
Same neighborhood, yeah. We live at Guadalupe and McClintock.
Okay.
And we've lived in two different houses. The first one was a rental for 2 years, and then in 97 we moved into our current house. We love Tempe. We think that Tempe is such a well-run city. That's been our experience the whole time we've been here. We think that it's a really friendly community. We live in a very friendly neighborhood, and we know all of our neighbors, and we just really love that experience. So.
Is there anything about your own neighborhood that is unusual or distinct, or that traditions that you have as neighbors?
Well, I was the neighborhood watch person in our neighborhood for about a decade, and we got together a lot, like 3-4 times a year, and it was like a family reunion. We didn't spend much time we don't spend much time in each other's houses, but on the sidewalk we spend a lot of time talking, and we still do that.
Outdoor talk.
Outdoor talk, right?
Which is rough here in the summer. But.
Yeah, it is rough in the summer, but we've had 2 families move into our neighborhood this summer, and and when we moved into our neighborhood, there were a lot of little kids, and they all grew up and they moved away, and it was just
more of an empty nester for a while.
Yeah, a lot of empty nesters, and then the last couple of years, younger families have moved back into the neighborhood, and it's so fun to see little kids. And one of our neighbors has kids that range from like 5 to 15, and they love playing sports, so they play baseball in our cul-de-sac. But they don't have a basketball net, but we do. So they come over and play basketball in our driveway all the time, and it's so much fun. And sometimes I go out and play with them. Yeah.
You just enjoy having you to be able to watch them play, probably.
Yeah.
Even if you're not able to always go out with them.
Yeah, and I think I want to say this. This is for the benefit of everybody. I think that every adult in the United States, in the world actually, should be talking to young people about what their dreams are, and then help them figure out how to achieve those dreams. And it might be something that requires a 4-year degree, or it might be something that requires a 2-year associate's degree, or it might be something that requires 9 months of vocational training. But we shouldn't decide what those passions are.
Mm-hmm.
We need them to discover their passions, and then we are the guide. We are the helpers. So, and I think all of us have a responsibility to do that.
That's great advice. Thank you. All right. Do you have a faith-based organization you attend, or what is your? What do you do?
I grew up in a Lutheran church,
Okay.
and so some of the traditions we still practice. I can trace back to that upbringing. I don't have the same commitment to faith organizations that I had when I was a kid, but I think the values that I have are greatly affected by that, just as much as my growing up on the farm were. So, yeah.
All right. Are there community things that you do? I know your time has been mainly at ASU, but are there other things that you've done in community?
I'm on advisory boards for various community groups and various educational organizations in the Valley, and I serve on committees for several of the chambers of commerce in the East Valley. And I think you know that I do a lot of family history writing workshops. I've developed 48 of them thus far.
That's
and
great.
Some of them I do frequently, and some of the on the list of 48 I do less frequently. But I really love doing that because I get to hear all these good stories about other people's families. And
tell us more about that. What are the goals of your workshops?
the goals of my workshop are, one, to get people writing about their families, thinking about their families. And my workshops are set up so if you don't know anything about your family history, you can still participate just fine. And some people who come to my workshops have done a lot of the research, but they've never written anything. And so I want to get them writing about it. And then other people haven't done any research. I want them to think about doing the research, and to continue to do the writing. And there are a few workshops that really stand out as my favorites. One of my absolute favorites is one called It's a Wonderful Life. And you know the film, It's a Wonderful Life. And
with
the
Jimmy
premise
Stewart.
Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah.
And the premise of the film is that where he says, I wish I'd never been born. And the angel shows him what life would have been like for other people if he had never been born. And some of them would have died, some of them would have been penniless, just horrible things if he had not been born. And so then he comes to appreciate being born. So what I do in the workshop is I ask people, think about what life would be like for the people you love if you had never been born. And I hear the most wonderful stories in that workshop. It's just remarkable. Yeah. And that's what in the workshops, the way I set them up is I usually have something like 15 to 40 questions for discussion and then writing. And we talk for a while, and then we write, and then we share the writing. And by the way, anybody out there, if you want me to come do family history writing workshops for your family or your group,
let's do one.
there you go. Yeah, there you go. I never ask for a fee. It's community service, and I love doing community service.
That is amazing. What a valuable thing that is for the community. Thank you. All right, so you're on some chambers of commerce boards, you said. So you probably notice when businesses open and close in Tempe around your neighborhood and the cycles that goes through.
Yeah.
Do you have favorite restaurants around here or events that you go to sometimes?
Yeah, we live at the intersection of Guadalupe and McClintock, and there are some there's some really good restaurants at that intersection. So I encourage people to go visit those restaurants there. So and Changing Hands bookstores there.
Yes.
Which is a wonderful place. A lot of events that we go to at Changing Hands.
An independent bookstore, there you go.
Yeah. It's a wonderful bookstore.
Yeah, we're very fortunate to have that in our community.
Yeah.
That was in downtown Tempe for a long time, and then we got to have it down closer to some of us in South Tempe.
Yeah, it's remarkable. And Tempe's got a lot of interesting places. A lot of Indian restaurants in Tempe, for example, and we like Indian food. So.
It's a lot of diversity then, huh?
Yeah.
As far as restaurants and businesses you can frequent.
Yeah, and I want to mention by name Wildflower Bread Companies.
Okay.
Yeah, it's at that intersection, and that's
Right next to Changing Hands.
Changing Hands. That's
You
our
can
very
get
favorite.
some books and or
That's
browse
our-
the books. And,
Yeah, that's our favorite. Yes, we love
Get
to
some
eat
soup
and go
and
look at
bread.
books. Yeah,
yeah,
that's our favorite.
that makes life worthwhile, doesn't it? To
Yeah,
be able to have these experiences and access to so many things that not everyone in the world does.
Yeah.
So, talking about the world, have you traveled and then come back to Tempe, and how has that influenced how you look at Tempe and ASU, and when you get to see other experiences in the
Yeah.
world?
Well, and I've traveled because of my work at ASU. So I did a week of work, 10 days of work at American University in Cairo about 15 years ago.
In Cairo? Okay.
And then I did a week's work at the University of Sydney in Australia.
Okay.
And that was about 10 days there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been to Mexico and for my work as well. And so, I'm grateful for those opportunities to have traveled the world. I haven't traveled a lot because my work keeps me pretty occupied. But whenever I'm away from Tempe, I really appreciate Tempe even more because of what it's like. The people here are so wonderful. The city is so beautiful, physically beautiful. And if you ever have an opportunity to get up at a high vantage point, like there's some tall buildings on the Tempe campus of ASU, and look out over the city of Tempe, it's a forest. It's a forest. It's all you see is trees everywhere. It's remarkable.
Urban forest?
Yeah, an urban forest. Yeah, and it's great because in our neighborhood, for example, we have a lot of great horned owls, and they perch in trees in our neighborhood or our yard and the yard right behind us because of all those trees.
Mm-hmm.
So it's fantastic.
It is.
Yeah.
I keep coming back to ASU, but I'm oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. I would like to say,
Uh-huh.
a couple more general things about
Okay.
ASU. So,
Yes, please.
I am so proud to work at ASU.
Mm-hmm.
When I came here in 1995, I think we had about 45,000 students. As of last week, we had over 135,000 students.
Wow.
Why? Because what we promise in that charter, the ASU charter says, evaluate us not by whom we exclude, but whom we include and how well they do, and then evaluate us based on how well we serve the community. And every day, especially when I was dean, I talked about that charter. ASU is so committed to that charter, and every word in that charter, by the way, comes from President Mckell,
Okay.
who's one of the most remarkable leaders I've ever encountered in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And every word in that charter reflects his commitments to helping students be successful, to serving the community, and a lot of that grows out of his personal experience too. He did not have an easy life growing up.
Mm-hmm.
His mom died from cancer. He talks about this all the time, so I'm not telling any tales out of school here. His mom died from cancer when he was in 3rd grade. His dad was in the military, so I think he went to 17 different schools. And they did not, because he was in the military, they didn't have a lot of, he was first generation. And so his humble beginnings and the way he has seen people struggle to be successful in life really drives what ASU is doing. And I am so proud to work at an institution that really is committed to serving others, to help others be successful so that they can achieve their dreams. And it's just, I can't tell you how proud I am.
Sounds like it would make your job even easier than when you enjoy it that much and believe in the charter and the mission.
Yeah, you wake up in the morning and you think I'm gonna help people be successful today, and then also I think that as an organization we strive. We've got a ways to go yet, but we strive to make everybody in the organization, students and employees, feel welcomed, included, supported, valued, respected, and that they belong. And I think every organization should be like that. If you ever want to have a good cry, go watch the Starbucks students who graduated from ASU. ASU has a partnership with Starbucks where Starbucks pays tuition for their employees, and a lot of Starbucks employees have gotten ASU degrees, and I've gone to some of the events they have at graduation time, and the students share their stories, and it's hard not to be in tears the whole time.
What it means to them to have a scholarship and be able to go to college.
I mean, yes, exactly. Starbucks has made it possible through their partnership with ASU for these people to achieve a dream they never thought possible. And if you go to their website, they've got some of these Starbucks employees telling their stories, and I guarantee you, you're going to have tears in your eyes.
Just tell us what is the day in the life of a dean like before you're retired? Because I can't quite picture it all. I think of some things, but I'm making assumptions. So tell us.
Well, I mean, first of all, your email inbox has about 500 new messages, 400 new messages every single day.
In overnight, okay.
And you've got to deal with almost all of them that day. And then there are days when I can't speak for all the deans, but there were days. Well, you're in meetings every day, at least 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week.
Right.
And some days. I was in meetings from 7 in the morning till 9 at night, back to back to back, no breaks. And so you're just on the go all the time. And then you get home at 9 o'clock and you got all these email messages you got to read before you go to bed. And so.
No wonder you're not gardening.
Right. But, you know, so as a dean, you're responsible for everything in the college. You're responsible for all the personnel actions, the hiring, the promotions, the annual reviews. You're responsible for all the financing of the college, and funding comes through tuition, grant money, gifts, and other activities in the college. But tuition is the big one, of course. You're responsible for the curriculum in the college. You're responsible for the welfare of all the students in the college, and you're responsible for the success of all of the faculty and staff who are serving these students. Which reminds me that, you know, some people have this notion that, you know, I'm a student in this college, or I'm a teacher or staff member in this college, I serve the dean. No, nobody serves the dean. Nobody. The dean serves everybody else. The dean's job is to make sure that all the faculty are successful in educating students, that all the staff are successful in supporting students and faculty, and that students are successful. Because if a student isn't successful, it means we failed. We've violated what we promised in the charter. We promised that we're going to have to be successful. So a lot of people come to you with things they need help with. There are a lot of opportunities to help other people when you're a dean. There are a lot of opportunities, and I had about 23, when I was dean, 23 East Valley groups that I met with regularly. Chambers of Commerce, mayor's offices, city councils, education groups, other community groups as well. And it's a joy. It's a joy to have the opportunity to be able to serve so many people.
That's a servant's heart. I like that.
Yeah, and then, you know, at graduation, that's the absolute favorite time. And I love going to the graduation ceremonies and speaking at the ceremonies, and it's a big thrill telling a joke and have 8,000 people laugh at it. So one of my favorites was Brock Osweiler, the football player. He graduated from the college that I was dean of. And so I asked him to be on my advisory board for the college, and then I asked him to speak at one of the convocations for the college. And when he was speaking, he was leaving the team in Texas to go to the Cleveland Browns. And just the week before that, I was preparing to do a workshop on writing obituaries. And I found an obituary from a Cleveland Browns fan that said, I want 6 Cleveland Browns players to be my pallbearers so that they can let me down one last time. I told that joke when I was introducing Brock Osweiler, and 8,000 people laughed, and then I turned around and looked at Brock, and they laughed again. And it was
was he a good sport?
He was a really good sport about. He's a really wonderful human
Mm-hmm.
being, by the way. If you have an opportunity to ever interact with Brock Osweiler, take that opportunity. One of the
Mm-hmm.
world's great people. Very
Yeah.
humble beginnings. He grew up in
Yeah,
Montana.
same. Okay, him
Yeah,
too?
in a small
Okay.
community, right?
Well,
Yeah.
Now you've retired as a dean and gone back to your teaching, one of your loves as a professor. So what is your day like now?
So right now I spend most of my time focused on my teaching, having the time to get back to doing a lot of research yet. And then I'm also developing curriculum for this new branch of ASU called Learning Enterprise, which is about lifelong learning. That is learning outside of a college degree.
Okay.
And that is so much fun, developing curriculum for
Yeah.
that. And some of the family history workshops I do will be
You
part
can
of that.
incorporate some of those things into
Mhm.
it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the actual workshops are part of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I do
Wow.
workshops at Mirabella, for example.
It's a great opportunity for
Yeah.
those students.
Yeah, so I spend a lot of time doing that and relearning some of the technology that you use for teaching at ASU that I hadn't used quite so much. So,
Mhm.
yeah, and I just love working with the students. And in the spring, they've asked me to teach a family history writing course, Intro to Family History Writing, which I developed years ago but never got to teach.
Mhm.
And then in the following semester, another course on writing personal narrative. So I'm really looking forward to that.
You have a lot of things going on, and
Yeah,
we're grateful that you're here with us tonight, taking
thank
the time to
thank
help
you.
us with the history of Tempe.
Thank you.
So your career is not over by far, but so far though, what do you think has been one of the greatest accomplishments of your career? What would you consider?
I look at, I think about, and I tell students this all the time, I've written, I don't know, 13 books, I think, and 300 articles, chapters, and conference papers, and, that's okay, that's fine. But nothing gives me more joy than seeing students be successful. And the flip side of that is nothing gives me more, in my professional life, nothing gives me more heartache than a student who isn't successful. And so I've had the opportunity to see so many students be successful, and I think have some role in that. A lot of my former graduate students, for example, have senior administrative positions at other universities.
All right, so they're your colleagues almost, right?
Yeah, and so that's really rewarding to see them be so successful. So, yeah.
It's a good way to measure it.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to skip down to, let's see, how about, so you have a very European background, as I do.
Yeah.
Western European.
Yes.
How do you define that culture or identity, and how do you think that fits into the broader issues we're talking about today?
Yeah. Well, I think that, I've celebrated my heritage in various ways throughout my life, and but I think that, those of us who have European backgrounds have a sacred responsibility to make sure that everybody else feels what I said earlier, welcomed, included, supported, valued, respected, and that they belong. Because sometimes I think people in the United States who don't have European backgrounds sometimes are made to feel not that they belong.
And so for our community, I know that's one of the things that Tempe strives for, to be inclusive and to be, celebrate diversity.
Yes.
Do you feel that?
Yeah, so I'm very proud of ASU's commitment to diversity, and if you look at our student body, the incoming students now, more than 50% non-European background, and so that's a point of pride, and ASU is going to soon be named as a Hispanic serving institution,
All right.
which is tough for ASU because we're so large, and you have to reach a certain percentage to do
Okay.
that. But I'm so proud we finally got there
All right.
on that. And I also am the city of Tempe. I feel the same way about the city of Tempe, that it does. And some of the other people that have interviewed in this series have talked about that Tempe is a place where people feel welcomed and valued and supported and respected, and that they belong.
Have you seen an improvement in that then over the years from when you first moved here and to now?
I've seen it the whole time I've been
You've seen
in
it the whole
Tempe.
time, okay,
Yeah,
so it
in
hasn't
Tempe,
changed
right.
that much. Okay.
Now, I have to say that you know, my most of my waking hours have been spent at ASU, right? So that has affected how I feel about those things.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's so interesting about the new, tell me again what it's called with the Spanish.
Hispanic Serving
Hispanic
Institution. That's an
Serving
official
Institution.
designation.
Okay, because of what we've discovered more and more through these weekly interviews about the origins of some of the first peoples in this area
Yeah.
were largely Hispanic.
Absolutely, yeah. And
so it's not a new thing.
it's not a new thing, and indigenous populations as well.
Absolutely.
And you know, and one of the things that I've always done when I've spoken publicly on campus is to acknowledge that we're on indigenous lands, and that we should be grateful for the opportunity to be here.
You have to honor that heritage. All right, I have just a couple more questions. Is there anyone in your family history that you would like to know more about that you haven't been able to quite flesh out in your research?
Well, I would like to know the specific circumstances of Andrew Roen's death, but
that weighs on you.
That's not going to happen, I don't think.
No certificate's not being available yet.
But another, by the way, another one of my workshops is, what's a conversation that you'd like to have with one of your ancestors who lived a long time ago, right? Or
and so you've thought about that answer.
Yeah,
now.
I've thought about that a lot. One of my fantasies is to go back and visit all of my ancestors. Of course, there are millions of them, right? So you can't do that, but to go back and visit them in their homes at the time when they were there. That's been a fantasy of mine. I'd love to someday.
Like time traveling then.
Yeah, time traveling, and maybe someday I'd write a movie script that does that. So I think you know, I've become more interested in the history of farming. So that, and one of the workshops I do is on weaving cultural history into our family history. And the more you study the history of a location at a certain time, the more you learn about the experience for your family. Because not a lot of families have left us journals and diaries and letters to help understand those things. So I would like to learn, and this isn't going to happen either, but I would like to learn more about my ancestors who are sort of prehistory ancestors, right? Yeah.
You wish you had some kind of record to learn something, a
Yeah.
letter or something.
Yeah, we've got the DNA, you know,
Uh-huh.
so if you're
Yeah.
European or Asian, you've got Neanderthal DNA in you,
Yeah.
right? Like from 1 to 3%.
Yeah, not much.
We know that much, but, right? And we're learning more about Neanderthals, so, yeah.
Have you heard anything from the other interviews about early people in Tempe or
I have
early
been
residents
I've been absolutely
piqued your interest?
fascinated by the interviews that we've done the last month or so, and the stories about Tempe, that a lot of them I had never heard before. And these people, you know, I've only been here for 26 years, and these people whose families have been here for generations, and the stories that they've been telling us in these interviews are just absolutely fascinating. So I hope that people watch all of those interviews.
So do I. I'm excited to get these all posted on our YouTube channel, and we'll get there soon.
Yeah,
They'll be up for everyone to be able to go through. All right, so what do you value most and why?
What I value most is how people treat other people. And I think that's the most important thing that any of us can do, and it's something I think about every day. And I, before I speak, before I act, I try to think about how will this affect other people. And part of that's my training. My training is rhetoric, right? And rhetoric is all about how you use language to interact with other people, to accomplish things in the world. And, so I try not to use this word if this word's going to be hurtful. Instead, use this other word, and be aware of the feelings of other people, and act accordingly. And I wish, my fantasy, another fantasy is that everybody on the planet wakes up every morning and thinks, how can I help the people I'm interacting with today feel welcomed, valued, supported, and that they are respected and that they belong here. Think about how wonderful the world would be if everybody did that.
It's a beautiful vision and goal. Yeah. How do you want your loved ones to remember you?
I want them to remember me as someone who strove to help other people. Including them. Right.
Well, I'm sure that they will. So you're in good shape there. Did we miss anything that you'd like to share with the audience out there and the world?
I want to tell one little story about my dad.
Okay, please do.
So my dad died in July of 2020. He was 98 years old.
Okay.
And I never heard my dad use a curse word in his life, except once he used a real mild curse word, really mild. And the circumstances were this. A cow, he was standing behind a cow, and this cow had been lying down, and the cow's tail was in the gutter, and you know what's in the gutter, right? Cow stood up, switched his tail, went right through his mouth, and he said a curse word, but a very mild curse word at that. That was the only time in my life when I heard him say a curse word. I thought that was pretty remarkable. Yeah.
Right, he had his standards for that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you so much for sharing so many memories with us tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the opportunity to live in the city of Tempe and to work for ASU.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. All right.